the upgrades I have on my Mini Cooper. A while ago I did a best upgrades for your Mini Cooper that was really about which upgrades were cheap and easy and would give you a lot of bang for the buck. But I thought I'd go through and talk about which upgrades I have in total on my Mini Cooper. So you've probably seen the video where I talk about the conical air filter that I added to my car, and it's from Spectre. And while I prefer the K and N cylinders, this was one that would actually fit in the box that I have. So because my air box was certain size, it was just easier to go with that one. They're a quick and easy bolt-on, and they're about $45. And even if you don't buy into that they're doing anything more, I think they do, because you've got about 2.5 times as much surface area and you've got a less restrictive medium. But even if that weren't the case, it's a fun upgrade because it talks to you more. You hear the whoosh, whoosh noise of the turbo. And that just makes the car more fun to drive, and that's part of what you're doing, is just making the fun factor higher. Related to the air intake, I have an AEM cold air intake system. Now, they call it a ram air. I'm not going to call it a ram air because it doesn't actually generate pressure the way I think a ram air should. But basically, it makes the scoop on my Mini Cooper functional. You take out the stop block that's in the hood, you put this on, and it ducts air through this plastic section out there into your air box. And so that gets you cold air from the highway rather than the warm air that would be coming across your grill and across your hot turbo. Now, if you have a stock turbo, you're probably generating a little less heat and a little less surface area than my turbo, because I've got a Garrett upgraded turbo, and it's rated at 320 horsepower. Just because it's rated 320 horsepower doesn't mean the car does 320 horsepower, but it's capable of generating enough air that I could do 320 horsepower. And that's important because the old system that was rated for a car at 180-ish horsepower wasn't keeping up with the rest of my upgrades, and so I needed more air. Part of getting more air also means getting rid of more exhaust. So I've got a 3-inch downpipe, and that attaches to a 3-inch all the way to the back cat system and exhaust. Now, the disadvantage to the larger exhaust system is she is quite a bit louder. I try to mitigate that by using a 22-inch muffler and an additional resonator, but she still has a little bit of highway drone that I would like to get rid of. At 74 miles an hour, she has this kind of brrrr noise, where at 70, she's perfectly quiet. She just whooshes along and she's quiet. But it's kind of nice because you hit the accelerator and you get that feedback of but you just want to have a car that drives well and sounds nice and does everything the way you want it to, but I don't want to ride in what sounds like a rice rocket all the time. So those were the choices that I made. I've also got the rubber seals that I've added. A couple of them are starting to come off, but that was the gap in order to reduce road noise. The heat shield, I had a rattle on that side of the car, and the heat shield was just to kind of quiet the rattle. And then because I didn't want it to look stupid, there's heat shield on both sides, so it's balanced and doesn't look funny. Next is the tires. I have a set of Conti Extreme contacts, and the Conti Extreme contacts are great tires, and I'm running them front and back. I'm actually running 2 different sizes because in order to fit under the wheel well on the front, I needed a slightly narrower tire than I could get on the back. And I wanted to have as much grip as possible. And so by increasing the surface area that's touching the road by probably about 65%, I've got more grip in the corners. And since the Mini Cooper already has a lot of grip, that's an impressive feat. But also, with the additional torque and horsepower, I need more tire in order to put that power down. Otherwise, I just rev the engine and burn rubber for a block rather than taking off and giving me some grip. So the tires were a big part of the upgrade, and there's something that I recommend anybody do to their car because it just gives you better stopping power and gives you more control in the corners. Lastly, I normally have a strut bar. However, in the process of doing all these upgrades, the strut bar gets in the way, so it was out. But also, because of the way my airbox hits, the strut bar just doesn't quite fit. The airbox ought to either sit back half an inch, or the strut bar ought to sit forward about half an inch. So I've got to decide whether I'm going to mod the strut bar or whether I'm going to mod the airbox. Now I'm leaning towards the airbox because rather than having this contained box, what I'd like to do is simply just have a lift area for the air intake, and just have it, have a much larger air intake that takes all the way up over to here, and go with that instead. So we'll see which way I go with that. But those are the upgrades that I have. I've been real happy. You can't see it from any of the places, so I'm not going to really say, but I have a much larger front mount intercooler. I've done the turbo delete pipe that takes and gets rid of the muffler on the turbo. So she's got quite a few upgrades right off. The next things I'm going to probably do are the injectors. I'm finally hitting the point that I'm pushing more air than I can get gas for. So upgrading the injectors is the next thing. Then I'm probably going to do the valve timing springs, because right now I'm limited to about 7,500 RPMs, and I'd like to be able to push that up to 9,000 RPMs. It's just one of those things where you start doing the upgrades, and the next thing that becomes a limiting factor is what you need to upgrade next. And pretty soon you've upgraded everything and there's nothing left. So that's the path that I'm on.